Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Boobies and Noobies. You can follow us at Boobies Podcast on both Instagram and Twitter. And if you'd like to support the podcast and get a little extra bonus Boobies content every month, you can support us on Patreon at Boobies Podcast. Welcome to Boobies and Noobies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and guess who's back? Back again. Serena's back. Tell a friend, like really, for real.
Tell a friend.
Tell them that Serena is back for not the second time, but the third time on this podcast.
I am committed.
You hold the record, Serena. You hold the record for most guest appearances on the show.
Let me tell you, I am no longer a novice romance reader.
Newbie no more.
No, I'm just a boobie.
Yeah, I feel like the fact that I don't think you signed on to do a whole series when we first did our first podcast together, which was Stripped, right? That was the first one back in like January or February of this year. And then our good friend Zoey Castile and Norma, her editor, reached out and said, hey, you want books 2 and 3? And I said,
loved our dynamics so much. I
had to have us for more.
Yeah.
And we had to read more, and we did. Yeah, so if you haven't guessed just yet, or if you for some reason missed the first 2 episodes with Serena, shame on you. Go back and find them immediately. But Serena is joining me to discuss the book Flashed by Zoey Castile. And this book was released just last month, August 2019, and is available on Amazon for $9.99 Kindle edition. It is the 3rd book in the Happy Ending series. We're not quite sure if it's the end. I hope not. I don't know, but I feel like it could be for these characters.
You know what? If it's not the end, we're going to find ourselves on a tour bus somewhere in middle America doing panels. Maybe we'll go to Prague or, you know.
You're really tired right now.
Somewhere. And we'll just talk about these erotic fiction novels for the rest of our
Just
days.
Zoey Castile books.
Just specifically Zoey Castile books.
Yeah, just Zoey. We read the first 2 books in the series already, Stripped and Hired. Those were the 2. If you, for some reason, aren't familiar with the titles, or let me give you a quick hint. It's got very shirtless men on the cover, and people are kind of labeling this series as sort of the male stripper Magic Mike book series.
Yes.
I mean, happy endings. Take a hint, you know? Anyway, I'm glad to have you back.
I'm glad to be back.
I'm always happy to have you here too, because 1, you're a delight. 2, you have a sultry voice. 3, you always have new hair. And I love that. I love it. Right now, I think the first time we recorded, you were going like Cookie Monster blue. And then second time was like maybe just like a faded blue. Like I think it had faded, and now you've gone the full bleach. And what's next? Are you going to add color? Or are you going to keep it blonde for a while?
Don't know. Wherever the wind takes me. I paint with all the colors of the wind, and that joke didn't land.
I got it. Colors of the wind, colors of the hair.
Right.
It's all one and the same. That's what Pocahontas was really talking about in that song. She was saying, you know, I've been really thinking about like what, you know, color to do next for my locks. Exactly. And she just hadn't found the right stylist. But you know what? She had like that natural wave. Oof.
She didn't need a stylist.
I know. We all aspire to have Pocahontas hair and to be Pocahontas. Maybe not, because she died of like syphilis.
Did she?
Didn't she? I thought wasn't it something? It was like syphilis or like tuberculosis, or it was something from coming to the New World.
Tuberculosis are 2 very different things. Yes, they have the same like suffix.
Is. It was an is.
But ma'am.
It was something that she contracted from like coming to England and like
from a white guy who's trying to colonize her life. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, right? That's how we all go, right? White men. Ugh. Sorry, white men. So speaking of white men, let's talk about a specific white man in this book.
Patrick Halloran.
I know. What a name. Patrick Halloran. Halloran? Halloran. I don't know why. I don't know if anybody could tell, but Serena and I are like surviving on not enough sleep while recording this.
It's 8:48 p.m. and that might not be late to some of you, but come on.
Well, and I feel like
women.
I don't know about anybody else, and I know we're out of that stupid Mercury retrograde at this point, but
blame it on the moon.
Yeah, blame it on the moon. Blame it on the moon. I said I don't know why that was what I thought of. That Adele song.
I set fire to the rain.
Yeah, but I was like thinking, I blame the moon. Do-do-do. Nobody realized they were going to get such a musical performance in this episode, I'm sure.
I didn't even hear before we hit record.
We were singing Final Countdown, and I told Serena this was like the second time I've heard this song sung to me in person by someone today. So, I don't know, maybe it's not just us. Maybe everyone's in a weird place. If you are, we feel you, we hear you. I woke up, do you ever have a dream where you wake up in the morning and there's a song already in your head and you're kind of like, that had to be something I was like dreaming about because like I haven't listened to that song on the radio or like it hasn't been a part of my life.
Any Nicki Minaj song.
Of all the things. Nicki, okay.
Keys to the Bands, yeah.
Okay, yeah. For me this morning, it was Panic at the Disco. It was like their new radio single. And I was just like, interesting choice. Okay, like I'm not opposed, but not necessarily the way I want to start my day. I almost said start my mom because it's that song where they're like, hey, look, ma, I made it.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to know that reference. I don't listen to Panic
You don't know
at
it?
Disco. No.
I'm one of the...
I only listen to Nicki Minaj, if you know it. Yeah, exclusively.
I'm one of those people where I don't actually usually listen to music unless it's like playing in the car. Like I'm a radio listener. I don't go on to Spotify. I don't go on to YouTube and like look music up. It's more of like whatever's playing when it's playing. So I'm really good at knowing what's currently on the radio, but
Can I just say what you just said in a grandpa voice?
Yeah, do it. Because that was a grandpa thing to say.
I only listen to the radio.
It's true.
I don't listen to the Spotify or the Pandora.
Or that, them YouTubes.
Or them YouTubes. I just listen to the good old-fashioned radio.
Good old-fashioned radio. Just the way it should be. You know?
That's my sultry grandpa voice.
Oh, that was sultry grandpa, not just grandpa. Yeah. Sultry grandpa. Okay, with that sultry grandpa, I think it's time to talk about this book. Let me give everybody the brief Amazon synopsis flashed by Zoey Castile before Serena and I pass out on the microphones. When a man makes his living by his looks, he can forget that love and lust are more than skin deep, but the right woman can remind him. A former soccer player, stripper, and model, legendary party boy Patrick Halloran finally gets his big break starring in the summer blockbuster. But when an accident leaves him changed forever, he hides away in his secluded Montana ranch. Okay, there are worse places to hide, let's be honest. Only his new housekeeper is allowed inside, with one rule: she's not allowed to see him. But Pat sees her, and she's the most stunning woman he's ever laid eyes on. Even her voice is beautiful. Still, Pat can't allow himself to get close to anyone, not without a fight at least. Magdalena, Lena, Martel, is a long way from Queens, New York. After a rough patch, the aspiring artist is working her way through college, even if it means keeping house for a man whose gruff voice she can only hear through a closed door. Still, Lena senses Pat's got a good heart, maybe even a lovable one. She's intrigued until his anger sends her running into the freezing woods. Now Pat will have to find her, and when he does, he may have found the one woman who can thaw his heart. Not to mention the rest of him. But can their new bond survive the paparazzi and their personal demons? Answer: it can.
Spoiler alert, happy ending series.
Yeah, this is the part where we dive into the spoilers. So if you have not read the book just yet, you are still welcome to join us for the spoiler discussion. However, you might want to pick up a book first and check it out for yourself. I think having read all 3 books in the series, I think it's safe to say you don't have to read them in order, right?
No, you don't.
Right. Yeah. Good. Okay. If you do, you're definitely going to know a lot more of the side characters because there are recurring characters in each of the stories, much like a lot of the books we read for the podcast have these, sets of characters that kind of coexist within series. So that is the case with Flashed, especially... I found it especially rewarding because Serena and I both had like an obsession with one of the side characters that we were introduced to in Stripped, and he made his appearance in Hired, and then he finally shows up again in Flashed, and we were just hoping he was going to get his own book, but I think he found love in this one, and it worked out for him. So now we're a little disappointed that Ricky, it seems like, is not going to get his own book. How do you feel about that, Serena?
I feel like I'm just really glad for him. Like, he's like going to settle down and just like live his best life, and if that means we don't get a book, it's fine. Like, it's just,
yeah,
I'm not gonna sacrifice his happiness for my momentary happiness.
He's still got his happy ending.
He did.
Yeah, it was cute too. I liked the way that he was brought back into the story. Ricky was the manager, right? The manager slash
the Aussie manager
slash like team captain for like the male stripper tour that went on, and we see like a few of the other stripper, although it seems like not a lot of them are still stripping like at this point, right? I feel like we've kind of let a few of them go because they're all off with their women and everything, getting married and everything. So yeah, but it was nice to kind of see some familiar faces from the books prior to Flashed. Okay, so let's set this up. Beginning of the story, we meet Patrick, and I know in the synopsis it says like he's, he got his big break doing a summer blockbuster. We don't actually see this. This has all already happened. Right. When we first meet him, he is basically like hidden away in his... It's so hard not to make Beauty and the Beast references because
Beauty and the Beast. It's like Beauty and the Beast and Jane Eyre.
Yes. Which one came first? Jane Eyre came first. No, did Beauty and the Beast come first? Like the whole fairy tale of Beauty and the Beast? Now I'm like really thinking about this of which one inspired which one.
I don't know.
I'd be very curious to hear that from any of like our literature. Yeah, let's look it up. But yeah, if anybody out there in like the lit world is like thinking, oh, okay, one came before the other, definitely let me know. I'm curious because this is clearly like very Beauty and the Beast inspired. You have this man who was very beautiful, very proud, a little douchey, and he became scarred from a car accident that he was basically responsible for. And he now has hidden himself away from the world because he, was a beauty and he's not anymore.
Right.
So
it's a classic glow down story. We know all about the glow up, but some of us are not born hot, okay? It takes time for us to become our fully realized hot selves. And this guy came out the womb smoking, and then he got in this accident, and he's like, I'm ugly. And he still jokes on every one of us because he's still not ugly. But
he's still fucking gorgeous. Yeah. I mean, like, the whole time. I can't
see him, but still.
The whole time they would describe him, I'm like, it sounds like he has like a few scars. I'm like, you're fine. You were, first of all, a professional soccer player. You got injured. Oh no. You had to go on and have a career as a successful stripper, model, and actor. Like, oh my gosh, cry me a river.
Right.
I'm so upset for you. But yeah, he had it made, gets in a car accident. I think it was almost more of like, I know there's the whole aspect that he's like scared of like what people will think of him by what he looks like, but I think a lot of it was guilt too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, like, and we definitely get more of that in Patrick's arc, like as it goes on, is that he feels very guilty, especially with like his stripper mates and everything. He's like, oh my God, like the night I got in the accident, I was like such a dick to them. I just was drinking, I was driving, like I was so into myself, and he hasn't talked to them in months because of it. He's like, I can't believe that I was that person. So, I mean, it's nice. You actually, Serena mentioned this before we started recording, but she admitted to me that this was her favorite in the series.
Zoey. Yeah, done yourself again. But you know what? This really was my favorite in the whole series. Like, there's something about it that it took me back to, like, high school or junior high, that kind of same giddy, like, feeling I had reading young adult books.
Okay.
And I really felt like that about this, because something we talked about in the last book, like, the sex didn't come till much later, but this one, my God, you had to get, like, through almost 200 pages before you got to the friggin' sex. Like, there was a little bit of phone sex, but not even. And then, but it was like, you forget you're reading a romance novel and like, or an erotic novel, and you're just like invested. It reminded me of, you know, just the times, that like innocent fuzzy feeling I got reading like the Twilight books. Like, in a good way. And I hate that like that reference is overused, but really, like, anyone that read those books can like kind of understand that feeling I'm referring to.
Well, especially if you were reading it as a teenager.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's different if like you're reading Twilight books like in hindsight now, and I'm sure that still hits a lot of people, you know, where you want to be hit while reading a romance. But when we were teenagers, reading Twilight was like, you really did get this like giddy feeling. Like, and I'm not starting to say that it was great literature by any means, but it was one of those ones. It was kind of the same way I felt about 50 Shades of Grey. Again, a book that we mentioned on this podcast far too often, but these are, you know, like it or not, definitely, I don't want to say standards for romance, but definitely like big markers for like what people think of when they do think of romance. And there's a reason for it. I mean, one of them is inspired by the other, and they're very much delayed gratification. I feel like the reason I kept reading Twilight as a high schooler was like, each book would get like a little hotter. Like, you'd be like, oh my God, they made out in this book. And then in book 3, it's like, he like gets a bed and they're like sleeping in the bed, and she like tries to like get him to have sex with her, and he won't do it. And you're just like, oh my God, they almost did it.
He's a good Christian vampire.
I gotta get married first before I bang and bite you. And then in the final book, I was like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. They're finally gonna do it. Thank you.
Break the bed.
Yeah, but it was like the lamest sex scene ever. I do remember that. And you know what? For 50 Shades of Grey, it was that I kept reading because I was like, after the first book, you know, they break up at the end of the first book. Spoiler if you've missed the first book of 50 Shades of Grey at this point. That's okay. You don't have to read it, Serena. Serena just said she hasn't read it. But did you see the movie?
No.
Yeah, whatever. But I kept reading because I was like, I want to know what's up with this guy. Like, this guy clearly has like rooted issues that are like making him the way he is, and like the things he does, and like, what is it? I want to know.
We're talking about Patrick?
No, I'm talking about 50 Shades of Grey.
Okay, got it.
But I guess we could tie that back to Patrick. But no, I was saying that was kind of the reason that I kept reading both Twilight and 50 Shades, was there was something you were waiting for. And in this book, it was the same as like, I think it was less about, it was a little more innocent. It was like less about me wanting to see them fuck and more about me wanting her to see him. Yeah. Because like, literally, like, I'm not even speaking like figuratively, like he does so much to hide himself away from her so she doesn't see him, so she doesn't react to the scars. And then they have phone sex before she sees him. Right. He like comes up behind her and like touches her, and she still hasn't seen him at this point. Like, there are several moments where you're like, I never thought I would see a book where they're having these steamy moments without like a physical attraction. Mm-hmm. And granted, she does eventually look him up online, so she does like know who he is, but
and still. I think that's a lot of the reason why it made me feel kind of like a teenager, because that's sort of what you do as a teenager. You don't really like, you kind of just text or you talk on the phone, but like you don't necessarily always, you're not necessarily always in like physical touch or
right.
Like, even like in the ages of AIM and just like online chat rooms, you ever have like a little online cyber crush and you just like, talk to them and you're like, what are they like?
Yeah.
But yeah, so Scarlett, she's like his friend /
the romance author that lives in the woods.
Yes.
She's basically his closest neighbor, because keep in mind it's Montana. Mm-hmm. I love her.
She, like, writes all these romance novels, as Kelly said, and then he modeled for her covers. And so she puts out, like, a Craigslist ad, and Lena answers it and comes to work, but then homeboy comes to work, comes at work. Oh, yeah. Comes all over work. And then Patrick, the not boss, like, screams at her the first time around.
Yeah, it's very Beauty and the Beast. Very, you know what, the book, and then they made a movie out of it too, was Beastly. Did you ever see that one?
Oh, yeah.
It's like the young adult version of Beauty and the Beast. Mm-hmm. I kept getting, like, super Beastly vibes from this one too, because again, it's all the same story. Like, right. But it's nice that she found, like, a different way to tell it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we have a lot of these great characters. Like, and if you do think about it in terms of, like, Beauty and the Beast, you have Scarlet, who's clearly, I feel like, the Mrs. Potts character.
Oh, she's so Mrs. Potts.
Yeah, and then there's other people, yeah, there's, like, the whole friend group of Lena's friend group and everything that they're kind of, you know, it was interesting. There were people we met who were, like, already in relationships, you know, that were, one of them ends up being Patrick's therapist, but, like, again, he doesn't really know it's his therapist right away because, like, he only talks to the man on the phone. So when they meet in person for the first time, he's not meeting him as his therapist. He's meeting him as the boyfriend or the fiance. I forget if they were engaged or not, but as the partner of this other woman.
Of River?
Yeah, that Lena's friends with. And you're like, oh, this. And he knew right away the minute he heard his voice. He's like, oh, you know things about me. Like, so I thought that was actually a really cool relationship. Yeah. A way to tie that in was the whole story with the therapist and everything. Yeah, so it's definitely a fun group of characters, and they're all different. They all have individual voices. I know that's something that's always important to me is, like,
for sure,
the more people you have, I'm like, that's going to be more of a challenge because you're going to need to make sure that we know who is who. And I think she did a really good job with that. I think it was very clear. And I really like that Lena has a story outside of being the, like, housekeeper / cook for Patrick. Like, she has her own story of, like, she's an artist. She was living in New York. She left New York.
Her stepmom stole her identity.
That was, like, fucked up. I was like, what?
Yeah, Zoey, you outdid yourself. It was like, whoa.
Talk about putting in more fairy tale tropes. You've got the stepmother, like the evil stepmother. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was insane too. I was like, I think I wrote at one point, I was like, the fuck? Like, right? Because Lena left New York to come to Montana for art school, and she did leave her sister in the care of her stepmother, who stole Lena's identity because she has a spending problem. Mm-hmm. And they mentioned her father passed away. Yeah. Yeah. So that's,
she had to, like, pay off her dad's medical bills.
Yeah. So she's not only, like, paying for school, she's also paying off her dad's medical bills. She's sending money to her sister, hopefully just for her sister, not for the stepmom. The stepmom is also, like, getting money out of it. I'm just like, this girl, and she's supposed to be in her 20s. I'm like, that is a lot to deal with. But yeah, it's interesting. I kept waiting. I was like, why isn't the sister coming to live with her? Like, go get the sister. Bring her back to Montana. And I mean, she does eventually. Spoiler alert, that's the end. But yeah, so okay, cool. Well, what were some of your favorite parts of the book?
Just, like, overall, I really liked the lead up to them meeting and face to face. I liked how there was an extended period of time where they were just kind of talking on the phone, and then she was able to develop a crush on a guy she'd never seen before, and I don't know, it was just like a soul connection. It wasn't just a physical attraction. And I feel like in the previous two books, not that there's anything wrong with, like, being physically attracted to someone.
No.
But it was just, like, another interesting, like you can have this, like, strong sexual attraction and still not necessarily know how they look like, and kind of just fall in love with their soul and their personality. Yeah.
That's what you liked about this, huh? Yeah. That's, like, what drew you with this one more? Well, it's very much the fairy tale.
It is.
You know, I mean, it's very much the way it's nice to see like sort of the fairy tale applied to like real life kind of thing. Especially because, I mean, not everybody, but I feel like most people who read romance read it for some sort of escapism and everything. But I also find some comfort in reading contemporary romance and finding stories like this where you're like, wow, like this could happen. This is a real guy. This is a real girl. This is, I mean, an odd situation, but not necessarily impossible. She's a struggling student. There's still real problems. I mean, she doesn't kiss him and he magically transforms into like the hot prince again. Like, right. But yeah, no, I mean, there's something about it that, is very magical and you're just sort of like, oh, it's almost real. Isn't that nice? Like, and then, it ends and you're like, oh, back to real life.
Back to real life.
God. But,
single, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Also think, this sounds weird, but I was most attracted to this man out of all three books.
Okay.
If that makes sense. It's like you can't see any of them, but like there's something about him that I don't know if it's like there's the weird like fucked up part of me that wants to help the guy. I'm like, oh, he needs a little help, but I'm like, boy, I can't help myself. But also, I think I pictured him looking like one of the Hemsworth brothers, but not Chris or Liam, but the third.
The other Hemsworth.
Yeah, the third Hemsworth. The other Hemsworth.
Have you noticed that in like families where it's like famous siblings, there's always at least one more sibling that's like not part of the fame. And then when people realize there's another one, they're like, oh my God, where have you been hiding this one? Right. Like there's another Property brother.
Oh.
Yep. There's another Hemsworth. Like there's all sorts of
Franco,
like.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is another Franco. That's right. Oh my God. Yeah. But it's, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, it's mostly men. Like the more that I think about it.
And I guess, yeah, the Olsen, so Mary-Kate and Ashley, and then there's Elizabeth, but Elizabeth's more like on the acting round. The others just are like hiding.
Who even knows? Yeah.
Like vampires in some like New York penthouse.
Well, Mary-Kate was the one that I think made that unfortunate, like, plastic surgery choice a few years ago. Wasn't it her?
I don't know.
I think it was her. I just remember there's like a picture where it was Mary-Kate and Ashley together and they all of a sudden do not look like twins anymore. And you're like, what happened? And yeah, I think it was Mary-Kate because I think she was also the one that was dating a guy that was like 20 years older than her. But we all make choices, some good, some bad. So there you go. Famous families.
She got tired of people mistaking her.
Yeah, she's like, I want you to know it's me.
There's a quote from the book that I really liked, in part because I think Zoey probably heard me say it in like the privacy of my own home somehow and decided to write it in, and I was feeling very creeped out because it is something I've said verbatim before.
Creeped out or seen?
I guess both. I'm gonna read it.
Tell me.
Okay, so the context is Scarlett is talking to what's her name? Lena. About like her marriage and how it ended.
Oh yeah, okay. Scarlett's marriage, to be
Scarlett's
fair.
Marriage, yeah. So we were together since we were 15, high school sweethearts and all that. That's 23 years together. Didn't seem to matter in the end. I couldn't have kids, but a secretary could. She makes a raspberry with her lips. Even I couldn't write that cliche. So I started writing about happily ever afters because I couldn't have one. It gives me, and then this is the line that I feel seen and creeped out by. It gives me a little bit of hope that there are still good men out there, even though you have to wade through garbage fires first.
Real life.
Garbage fires. That's some real talk.
Yeah. Hashtag garbage fires.
Mm-hmm.
Last episode, or our ice cream lover episode, it was hashtag resist the boner. And so this episode, it's got to be hashtag garbage fires.
I'm sorry, if ice cream is involved, there's no boner that can be resisted. Let me tell you.
Boner's covered in ice cream.
Out. Yeah.
Boner's in the ice cream. But yeah, no, that's I mean, especially if you're tackling the minefield that is dating nowadays, as Serena and I are, and discuss on a regular basis, that there are definitely garbage fires to wade through. Absolutely. But I do appreciate the fact that from Scarlett's character is so hopeful. Like, she is such the beacon of hope, like, throughout the whole story. Like, she is always there for Patrick. Lena, she's always there for Lena. Like, I mean, she no matter what, you know, even though she went through this divorce, like, recently, and she was with this person for most of her life, you know, high school sweethearts and everything, she still, like, transitions out of that into, like, even if I don't get a happy ending, I'm going to write them, because then somebody does, somebody will read it, somebody will see it and everything. And in the end, she gets the happy ending she deserves.
Yeah.
With our man, Ricky.
Rick.
God, I love Ricky. He's so great. He's so great. Yeah, everybody, it's good. I really like when all the strippers show up at the house. Eventually when Patrick's like, he's like sad in bed and he wakes up and there's all these like stripper men standing over him, like in his bed, like, dude, come on.
You can't be sad in bed if that's happening.
I know.
Let me just tell you.
Yeah. So, was there anything specific that you found lacking or not, like, to your favorite? I did like this book. I don't think it was my favorite like it was for you. And I think it's because instead of looking at Patrick as like the character that if I was in Lena's shoes, like, I'm going to help him, he was like borderline a little too sad boy for me sometimes.
Agreed.
And Lena, I will say, I feel like Lena, I can connect with a lot. And that was how I felt about in the last book. It was Faith, right? Is that they were both very proactive women. They were very invested in, you know, for Faith, it was her career. For Lena, I mean, it is her career, but also her family and her art and everything. Like, they were go-getters. So I really love the way that Zoey Castile writes strong women. Mm-hmm. And as strong of women she writes, I think for the men, what's interesting is that she writes a lot more vulnerable men. Yes. And that is what I am attracted to. Not that I'm attracted to like extremely vulnerable men in real life, but I like that that's the stories that we've gotten out of these three books are these very strong women and these, I don't want to say not strong men, but because that
complex, like
they are. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's, I shouldn't be trying to, you know, sum them up into like, she's strong, he's vulnerable. Like, they really are complex characters, just like we're complex human beings. But yeah, it's a different look that, especially when you go into a series that, like, I remember when Stripped first came out and people were like, yeah, this is going to be the Magic Mike romance novel. This is going to be the male stripper romance novel series. And I don't think you necessarily expect to go into a book series about these very overtly masculine men, like, stripping, and then you walk out of it with like these really deep emotional stories. Like, that's been the most surprising and the best takeaway, I feel like, from this book series.
Totally.
Yeah, so that's me. It wasn't my favorite. And you know what, thinking about it, I'm trying to think which one was my favorite of the three. And it's really hard because I feel like there were things I really liked about each of them. Like, I remember Stripped, I really liked a lot of it. And then it was like the ending that wasn't like my fave. Mm-hmm. And then Hired, I really did like this romance between, it was Faith and Aiden. Mm-hmm. And it was very hot. I liked that a lot. This one definitely had a good build. Ooh, yeah. You know, getting up to those.
When it happens, ooh, girl.
Oh, yeah, it happens good. And it happens a lot, and it happens everywhere, every surface. One of my favorite parts was when, it's going to sound so weird. One of my favorite parts was when Lena got lost in the woods.
Yes.
So Lena has like a little tiff with Patrick. Pat and Halloran. I didn't do it well.
Well, Lena ran so far.
But she couldn't get away because Patrick came after her.
He like was having like a PTSD kind of episode, or I don't know, can we call it that? Is that?
I feel like there's definitely some sort of PTSD attached to it because it was a trauma.
But, like, do we call it an episode? Or is that...
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. That seems like...
He was triggered. Like, his PTSD
trigger,
was
for sure.
triggered. And,
yeah.
And, like, you tend to see, like, throughout the book, he has these flashbacks to his, maybe that's why it's called that. Maybe.
I don't know. Or flashed as in... Yeah, because it's definitely not flashed as in, like, I'm flashing you the goods, right? That's not it.
So, yeah, he'll have these flashbacks about the accident and just, like, his brother. And then he saw, like, Lena... I can't exactly remember why Lena triggered it, but then he, like, hurt himself. He, like, punched a wall?
Yeah.
Or he hurt his
That's
hand.
always, like, a recurring thing in romance novels is, like, when a man gets angry, he punches usually a wall. Like, it's usually an inanimate object. An inanimate object.
Right.
But, yeah, the wall is popular. Well, and wasn't this when she saw him for the first time?
So he punched the wall before.
Yeah.
And then he, like, went to his cave. So Beast and Beauty and the Beast, like, has this, like, room or whatever.
His tower, yeah.
And then this guy goes to the gym. Like, this is his, like, little hideaway. And Lena's not allowed in the gym. So he's, like, in the fetal position, like, bleeding profusely and just, like, passed out. And she knocks. She's like, Patrick, I'm coming in. You're hurt. And then he's like, don't look at me.
Yeah, and he gets mad at her.
He yells at her. He's
yells
like,
at her.
Get out of here.
She's like, I don't care what you look like. You're fine. Like, I know what happened. You're good. And yeah, and then she runs. She's going to run to Scarlett's house. She goes through the woods. And then, of course, like,
her phone dies.
Is cold. Her phone dies. She basically, like, passes out in the woods. And Patrick, who basically up until this point has been, like, agoraphobic. Like, he does not leave the house. The most he's done is he put up she does kickboxing, and so he put up a what do they call them, the bags? Yeah, in the garage for her, and, like, he doesn't even realize it until afterwards that he's like, oh, I left the house and went to the garage and, like, put this in. But he, wastes no time in running after her when he thinks she's in danger and, like, saves her. And after that point, he's fine. Like, after that is he, I don't want to say he goes back to, the way it was, but he's more open to meeting people and, going to events. He goes to a Halloween party with her, but he goes in costume so that, you can't see his face or any of his scars. So it's a step-by-step process. But that's a major turning point in the story for sure, is when he lets her, in, so to speak. And then they bone. I have to say, I thought it was, like, hot before they even had, like, physical interaction. Like, the phone sex and just, like, when he's behind her and, like, touching her and she's not allowed to turn around. Oh, is that the excerpt you saved for us?
One of them.
Yes.
There's a line she says that's so good. I'm like, yes, Zoey.
Get it.
Because I felt it.
You felt seen in this book. You had a lot of scene moments.
So, yeah, he's standing behind her. She doesn't see him. He's, like, touching her shoulders, and she's feeling that closeness. And she says, okay, I say, I'll stay. We'll figure it out in the morning. Or maybe it was him. I don't know. I think it was her. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Okay, I say. I'll wait. Lena says, okay, I say, I'll stay. We'll figure it out in the morning. I lean my head to the other side, brushing my hair away. Close my eyes and feel the sensation his lips bring to my skin, like I've been reduced to the fizz of champagne.
Yes.
The fizz of champagne. I know that feeling. You know that feeling.
Oh, fizz of champagne. Yeah. Good sensory details. I mean, it'll come as no surprise that, when we do give the grades for this book, like, I feel like the syntax level is very high. Like, I have to say, I'm really excited to see, one, I'll be sad if this is the end of the series, but I do feel like it was, like, a good culmination. Like, it does feel like they wrapped it up really nicely. And I don't want to say all the characters get their happy ending, but it's, like, it really is, like, that doesn't necessarily mean that they all end up with somebody at the end. Like, that's not necessarily the happy ending for all these guys. But the people who are looking for love and, find that person, they get their person in the end of the story. And So I'm curious to see where after this series Zoe Castile goes, because I want to keep reading her work. And movies. Yeah, you think they're going to be movies? I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like, do you remember when Magic Mike did come out? And did we talk about this? Had you seen Magic Mike?
I still have not seen Magic
God, see, and you're not going to get then, because like what I'm going to say is like when Magic Mike first came out, everybody was like, oh my God, I'm going to get all my girlfriends. We're going to go see this movie. Guys are getting naked. And there's definitely them stripping in it. And you see more than one person like bare ass, you know. But that being said, there's a like major actual story in Magic Mike, and it's a Steven Soderbergh movie.
Say, right?
Yeah, so like if anybody like when I think of Steven Soderbergh, he has a very distinctive style, like with the Ocean's movies, and I think he did, what was that like drug running movie in Mexico too? It's not Crash, but it's like another one word name, right?
Sicario? No,
it's like it was a while ago. Shoot, I'm pretty sure that was him. I can't think of it, but
let's look it up. It wasn't Snatch.
No. He has like
better edit this all out because I sound like an idiot.
He has a very distinctive style though. So like when I heard that Steven Soderbergh was the one making a male stripper movie, I was like, wait, that's gonna be like really good. Like I think people went into it thinking this is just gonna be like gratuitous nudity all the time. And I feel like that's the same way people think about romance novels is like, I'm going to go into this and it's going to be people having sex every second of this book.
Literally, that was me.
Yeah.
And like, Zoe, you proved me wrong.
Well, and now you've read 3 books by Zoe Castile, and it'll be interesting too. Like, I do think you should explore like other romance just so you can see that everything's different. Like, it's not every book is going to be like these.
I think I lucked out.
Yeah. I feel like as far as like first romance series go too, like if anybody out there listening is not a romance reader or even if you are and you're just looking for a good series, this is definitely a great place to go. Like, and I think if you're just getting your start with romance, it's not, I don't think it's going to be too overwhelming. Like I definitely, when I have guests, I do want to be respectful of kind of like what people, want to read, but also sort of what they don't want to read. Like I don't want to force anybody to read something that's going to make them uncomfortable. I want them to read something that might challenge them, but no shaming here, no kink shaming, no triggers or anything. So but I feel like this is a good one that across the board men and women I feel like would appreciate, because there's some really good characters, there's some really good sex, and they're fun. I mean, they really are fun. Like the dialogue's really fun, the cast of characters are fun. I would so want to hang out with this group of guys.
Hell yeah. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, they're super fun. So I would definitely be on board with that. But yeah, so I think we're both excited that, this was a great series, but also kind of sad that it's over. If it's over. Maybe it's not.
Maybe we'll be doing our New Orleans tours.
Yeah.
And then
that'd be great.
Speaking on panels.
Yeah. The Zoe Castile book con. Yes. Zoe con. You know that you can count us in. Yeah, you know that you can count us in. Zoe will be there. So that's another thing. I didn't even think about that, but I did want to mention that all 3 books in this series are very different from each other. Like they take place in 3 different cities. I think if you go into it thinking sort of like a typical romance series where you're going to have the same cast of characters in like the same cute little town and everything, that's not this. Like you definitely do get some overlap with the characters, but they are 3 very different stories. Your first one is you have, I guess they all are first kind of meet cute scenarios. Like in the very first book, Stripped, you have, isn't that the one where their laundry gets mixed up and she like opens up her laundry bag and it's got all his thongs and everything in it, and they're neighbors. And then in Hired, they have sort of like a one night stand sort of situation and then segue into dating after that. And then in this book, I don't want to even call it a meet cute, but it's like enemy. I guess it's like an enemies to lovers book, sort of. Like
Totally.
it's enemy to lovers mixed with like boss employee romance, but not really. I mean, it's like he's not really her boss.
Right.
Like
she says it multiple times.
Yeah, in fact, Scarlett, I think, is the one that pays her, so she's the boss. But yeah, it's definitely more of like a enemies to lovers sort of story in this one. But yeah, they all take place in different places. The first one is Boston,
New
York.
And then
Why was I thinking Boston? Oh, because they end up in Boston.
Yeah.
And then second one is New Orleans, and then this one is Montana. I mean, yeah, talk about the like tour that you could do with this series, right? You do the whole bus tour.
Come to LA, Zoey.
Yeah. So book 4 is gonna be LA. That's what we're hoping for.
But it's spelled A space LAY.
Oh my God. That sounds like the porn name. Like
Lay.
Super funny. Since we're on the subject of porn, you know, as we do, I have to give a brief shout out to our girls at There Will Be Porn. Kate and Meredith are the hosts of There Will Be Porn, and every episode they watch one of the porn films from AVN's top 100 porn films of all time. So, but they can say it better than I can. So take it away, Kate and Meredith.
There Will Be Porn is a podcast about pornography, but it's hosted by 2 women, so just don't worry about it, okay?
I am Kate, a sex-positive married woman who loves watching porn in the morning.
And I'm Murda, a former gymnast, a current feminist, and someone who loves masturbating to herself in the mirror.
Each episode, we watch a movie from the top 100 adult films. From farmers' daughters to slutty secretaries, we think about what porn has to teach us, research the history of adult filmmaking, and look deeply at surgically close images of vaginal penetration, then ask ourselves, are we sure this is hot?
If you're looking for sex education, women's empowerment, and compliments on the symmetry of porn stars' butts, then you'll love our podcast, There Will Be Porn. And if you don't trust us, trust someone with the username A Dude With a Penis on iTunes who said, never heard anything like this. Women watch porn too? Hell yeah.
You can listen to our podcast at morebanana.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
It's all audio, so we won't see you there, but you might see UM.
You can find us everywhere on social at There Will Be PRN because you can't spell out porn on the internet.
Check out There Will Be Porn. They're part of the More Bananas podcast network. They're fantastic. We love all the podcasts at More Bananas. So check them out. Female podcasters. We need them. Ladies, speak up. We want you. We hear you. We are you.
Potassium.
Yep. Potassium. Bananas. That's that. Okay, cool. Well, let us go ahead and, I mean, it seems like we don't have a lot of negative things to say about this book. I also really love the way that Zoey Castile tied in both Patrick's insecurities with Lena's art. And I mean, I kind of feel like that was something that I saw coming, was that she's basically having like writer's block, but it's like artist's block. And it's like, I don't know what to paint. I don't know what to draw. Like, and in the end, she ends up basically drawing him, and you know, he poses for her and everything, and that ends up being this giant art show that she has at the end in New York, and he comes to New York, and everybody comes to New York, including his brother, and, you know, happily ever after from there. But I did like that. I was surprised because I feel like the one thing I was missing in this book, and it's going to sound so silly, and I feel like this is something that I brought up in the last book too, was I was shocked he didn't strip for her or dance for her at least once in this book. In fact, there were actually a few mentions of it where she like is like, are you going to dance for me? And then I think there's another chapter where she's like, well, he didn't do his routine for me, but he made me dinner instead, or something like that. And I was like, oh, wait, I want him to dance. Like, cause I almost, it's like I wanted him to prove not just that he was like getting over this like these insecurities that he had about like his scars, but I kept wondering if like this accident that he was in affected him physically in terms of like the things he was capable of doing. But I was like, no, it's clear it hasn't, because he's like working out at the gym all the time, and like he's clearly capable of doing like everything he was doing beforehand. So I was like, where's the strip? Like I was like waiting for the strip to happen. But then he poses for her. So I was like, okay, I guess that's sort of it makes more sense in terms of the fact that she's also an artist.
And it's interesting because I have the opposite, but then I guess like people that are seeking out these books are sort of looking for that like male stripper experience. But for me, I think had there been a striptease, I would have found it kind of corny.
Cheesy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would have been like cringed.
Yeah. Well,
out.
and I think, again, I think it's part of it is, like you mentioned, like I think it is part that when I came into the series, I was expecting this to be about the male stripper group and everything. And the first book is very much about that. The second book, we only get some stripping at the very end. And then this one, I was like, oh, we've just lost the stripping altogether. Where did the stripping go? Where has all the stripping gone? But, yeah, but
Make
again.
America strip again.
Make America strip again. 2020. The year of stripping. Yeah, so that was something that I don't know why. I think it was just because they actually did mention it. Like, oh, is he going to dance for me? I hope he dances for me. And I was like, but he didn't. But he posed for her, so I guess it was okay.
They have a whole lifetime for him to dance.
Yeah, that's true.
We just won't read about it. But.
Yeah, and in the end, it's very sweet. They move back to Montana together, and they take her sister with them and everything. And let's talk about his brother, though, because I loved Patrick's brother in this book, Jack, because I feel like the typical route you would expect it to go, with it being that he was in the car with Patrick when they got in the car wreck. And at first I thought he was dead before they mentioned that he was in a hospital and everything doing like physio. And
I also thought like he was going to be very angry.
Yes.
With Patrick. And I think that's a lot of the reason why Patrick couldn't forgive himself is because he was just so like, oh, not okay, but like okay with the situation and sort of optimistic that like Patrick felt even more guilt about it, and he couldn't fully forgive himself until it was more like Patrick could not let himself be happy or free with Lena or just like any of his like relationships with any of his friends or his newfound friends until he forgave himself. Because I think every time he looked in the mirror, and this is kind of like a through line through the book, like he never really like look at himself for too long. His gym doesn't have windows or mirrors. Like he is repulsed and like frightened by the way he looks, and not because, I mean, in part it's like for vanity reasons, but also it's like the constant reminder of like what he did and how it affected
other people.
Yeah. And so,
because I think that's one of the reasons that you're able to overlook the fact that Patrick is so sad and angry at times, is like, especially if you're talking about like Beauty and the Beast, talk about like a very selfish story, right? I mean, like this is very much like him holding her prisoner, and he hates the way he looks, and it's not a great message in terms of also like constituting what is beauty. And this one, yes, he was a model, he was a stripper, he was an actor, he was, obviously gorgeous and everything. But I think you definitely hit it on the head when you said that it's less about him seeing himself in the mirror and being like, oh my God, I'm scarred, I'm hideous. Like if you have scars, you're ugly. And more about like, no, these scars are reminders of the scars, like metaphorically and literally, I've left on other people's lives by the dick actions I took. His brother has been in a hospital. He thankfully, was injured, but like not terribly. Like he's recovering. Like, so, that was nice. I was kind of happy that we didn't have to deal with like a really sad backstory with his family. Because I feel like that's guilt that probably doesn't go away, for a lot of people. It does have a little elements of, this is like this one trope that kind of annoys me a little bit in romance, is that by finding love, it kind of saves you or like rescues you. And I feel like there's a little bit of that in this book. I don't think it's too heavy. Like,
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
That's the one. If I had any notes, it would be that one. Where's the stripping? Strip again. Make America strip again. And two, that, you know, I don't necessarily love sort of like this message of like, love will save you, love. But I mean, love conquers all. I feel like that's like a theme in so many stories that we've just kind of accepted.
I mean, love will save you. I think self-love will save you.
Yes.
You know? And that's actually one of the few issues I had as well. It's like, in a way, Lena was sort of like the manic pixie dream girl, where like she sort of like came out of nowhere, and like she showed him like a side of himself that he wasn't like in touch with. And
right.
Scarlett and Kaylee, the doctor, like couldn't really, you know, no matter how much they spoke to him, like he was never convinced. And I hesitate to say, I mean, like, I did say Manic Pixie Dream Girl, and I think she definitely had those tendencies, but she also was, like, a very complex character herself. And she had
absolutely.
Fair share of issues. But, yeah, it's something I did take issue with is, like, he only sort of began to get on this journey of self-healing when she sort of, like, entered the picture.
Right. And was very much, like, kind of not saying, like, you need to do this, but sort of, like, acting as his like pseudo therapist kind of in a way. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I guess I would have liked to have seen a little bit more self-love. Although I do like what his therapist tells him, and what he does start implementing as the story goes on is that he has these what if moments where he imagines like the worst case scenario, like, oh, what if this happens and, you know, she's going to leave me. And if she leaves me, I'm going to fall into this pit of despair and everything. And his therapist says, I don't know why you're imagining it like this. Why don't you imagine the best possible case? Like, what if she doesn't leave me? What if we get married? What if we're deliriously happy? What if we have children? Like, and so you start to see him actually implement that as the, like, I guess last third or so of the book goes on. And I was like, oh, okay, I appreciate this. I also love the fact that we have somebody going to therapy in a story. Totally. Like, I love that. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm like, you don't see enough, people don't talk about mental health enough, let alone write about it, you know, make movies about it. So I do like that was in there too.
Yeah.
But
and also as much as I really liked this book and it was my favorite, but that is not to say that it wasn't chock full of tropes. Like,
oh, no.
It was trope.com.
Yeah.
Tropey as all hell. But the thing is, if you're okay with it, you're going to be okay with the book. And I was just like, I kind of just let it wash over me. I'm like, I get that I've read, watched, you know, heard the story a million times, but I was still okay with this iteration of it.
Well, I feel like sometimes that even helps better. Is like if you have like a reference point going into it, you're like, oh, okay, this is like a modern Beauty and the Beast. Okay. Like, because it's like, it's the same reason I like romance is that I'm like, I know going into it that this is all going to work out okay. Like, I know that there's going to be these markers in their relationship. Like, there's a misunderstanding. You know, something goes wrong to try and pull them apart. I'm like, I know this going in. It's one of the reasons I like romance. It's also one of the reasons people don't like romance. But that being said, it's very similar to the story structure of fairy tales in that, you know, there's going to be these specific character types. There isn't really as much of a villain in this one. I mean,
he is his own worst enemy.
Exactly. I feel like that's exactly what it is personal
and also
demons.
That guy Keeler or whatever who's like trying to be like, let's get these photos and make some money.
That was, I guess we didn't talk about that. That was kind of, for me, I almost feel like we didn't even need that.
No.
Like, there was this whole moment about this guy that Lena goes to school with, Keeler, stupid fucking name. That is such a douche name, right? Mm-hmm. That he basically is trying to get pictures of Patrick. Because, like, nobody's taken his picture in a while. You know, there's going to be a lot of money for it. He was a celebrity and everything. So there's, like, one encounter with a paparazzi. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I guess that's sort of, like, the physical point of despair, I guess, moment you would have where it's like, okay, he's having all these inner demons. Here's like the outer demon. I feel like we didn't necessarily need that.
Well, I guess he was the catalyst for Lena, like, looking up Patrick. She didn't know his name. His, like,
right.
And she wouldn't have, like, thought to Google him until he, like, whispered in her ear.
Yeah. Which again, it's like it doesn't. Yeah, I don't think it is. I don't think it has like a major impact on their relationship. So it's one of those things where I'm like, if you took it out of the story, I feel like the story would still be what it was. So yeah, I don't know if we necessarily needed it, but anyway, let's talk about the sexy bits. I know that we've got a few sexcerpts that we need to read because we have to give everyone a little taste of what they're in store for when they read Flashed, and then we'll wrap things up. So, Serena, do you have a reading you'd like to grace us with? I know that this book like spoke to you on so many levels. You felt seen so many times. Did you feel seen in the sex scenes?
Did I feel seen? I felt seen. I'm going to put on
your sultry voice?
Patrick Halloran voice.
Oh, I'm intrigued by that.
Well,
okay.
I mean, well, maybe not because it's going to be too funny, but I've dreamed of you. He tells me, his face lit by the shadows of the flames. He pushes my leg aside with his knee and pumps once, reaching deeper inside me. Show me what we do in your dreams. He slides farther and farther, slipping into my wet meow. I can feel the pressure building in anticipation of this. He kisses me, driving into me harder and faster. I want to be crushed by the pressure of his body. I want to feel that breathless moment over and over until I unravel so much I won't think. I'll be able to be put back together the same way.
Damn, girl.
Yeah.
I feel like when you give us your readings, there's almost like a poetry to them. Like it's like, I want to do this. I want to do this. I'm like, yep. Speak it, girl. Like, yeah. So that's good. That's good.
I like that one because it's like dreams and like.
I know. It's exciting. I want to give you a little taste of something maybe a little bit earlier. Let's see. Okay, so the scene I chose is one of the ones where it's dark in the house and Lena comes into the house and he's like, yeah, come in. And he tells her, don't turn around. And so he just kind of like touches her and everything. But let's start from here. And this is right before the fizz of champagne moment that Serena already read. And we go here. Lena, he says softly behind me. I begin to turn around, but he grips my hips. Don't turn around, please. I hold my breath and fight the urge to spin on my heels and face him. I want to look into his eyes. I want to run my hands across his chest. I want to do all the things he's been promising every night in the shadows. When the pressure of his hands leaves me, I ache for it. I whisper, don't let go of me yet. And then a little farther down, he says, can I kiss you here? I nod, brushing my hair away. When Patrick lowers his lips to the crook of my neck, it is everything I imagined and more. They are soft, pressing a reverent kiss on my bare skin. That kiss hollows out my insides and leaves me craving for more when it's gone. God, that's not even a sex scene. I mean, that is just like the first kiss, and it's on the back of her neck. And I'm just like, ugh.
You're just reduced to the fizz of champagne.
Yeah, it hollows out my insides. Like, okay, well, having read all 3 books now in the Happy Endings series, and again, I hope there's more. If there's not, I'll be content, Zoey. But yeah, I would love for there to be more. Where do we go from here? I mean, is there gonna be more romance in your future, Serena?
I officially retired. No, I'm kidding.
That's it. We're calling it quits.
We're calling it quits. You know, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Okay.
I really liked Zoey Castile's books, and I think she spoiled me because it's like the storytelling that I like and the writing that I like, but also,
and we couldn't have planned for that.
No,
we didn't know that going in.
Exactly. It was just sort of like just my luck, and it just happened to have like a side of like penetration. So like, and I like that. So I think I would read more of Zoey's books. I mean, I would try other books as well. Yeah, for sure. But is this not the answer you're looking for? Maybe I should make it more.
No. Okay. This is fine. I think that's a great answer in that you're definitely open to reading more romance. But you know, I mean, I think there's definitely an added fear to it that it's like you came in with such a successful series to start with that it's going to be a lot to measure up to.
I think so.
And you know what? That's the same for anything. I mean, you're going to read other books that you're going to be like, wow, this is great. And then you're going to read other ones and be like, oh, well, it was fine. But I mean, it's no Zoey. Like,
it's no Flash.
Yeah, it's no Flash. I like what you said about a side of penetration. Yeah, I think that's a good way to go with it. How about let's give Zoey and Flash our last little set of grades. And just as a reminder, it's 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that it could possibly be, 1 being absolute trash, which it is not. And
a garbage fire.
Garbage fire, wading through garbage fire. And we're going to grade for story, syntax, and sexcapades. So let's start with story out of 10.
Out of 10, I'll give it an 8.
I gave it an 8 too.
Nice.
I gave it an 8 too. I was always engaged. I mean, it sounds like we both were. There's definitely tropes, but it's kind of like, I honestly happily accept the tropes in this story because I'm going into it with like Beauty and the Beast. Like that's what the story is going to be. Yeah. And it's better than Beauty and the Beast, I feel like.
I think so too.
Yeah. Less creepy, less Stockholm syndrome-y.
Right.
So that's always good. How about syntax? The lovely Zoey's writing, her style, all of it.
I will give her a 9.
A 9. Okay. I actually gave her a 10. Like I really did. I feel like I've only done that a couple times on the podcast, and it really just because I feel like there's nothing for me to put down. Like, I mean, I just feel like she has a clear voice and the dialogue is great and the sex is great and it's so clear. How about the sexcapades?
10.
Is it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I gave it a 7. I know. Well, it's just because I was like waiting and then I was like waiting a little bit more and he didn't dance for her.
And that's why I gave it a 10 because there was no dancing. Thank you.
That being said, I do really appreciate the sex that was in it. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I think it would be closer to an 8 than it would be a 7. So those are our thoughts. Yay. Okay. So goodbye, happy endings. We'll miss you. Hopefully, maybe there'll be happier endings. Maybe there's a sequel.
Maybe.
A sequel to the series. Maybe it'll be their children. I've seen books like that before.
Weird. Oh my God. Maybe my grandchild will come on this podcast. Who knows?
Oh God. Well, and if this is the end for happy endings, I think we'll be okay with it. And hopefully, Zoey Castile has a lot more for us in the future.
Yeah, but for now, Zoey and Norma, your girl retiring from the podcast. We wrapped up the happy ending series. Now you won't hear me
until the next book.
Yeah.
And then she'll gladly be back in that chair.
But if you want me to do the audiobook, hit me up at Surreal, SERREALL on Instagram. Slide in the DM.
There you go. I mean, you have that sultry voice, especially when you do your sultry Patrick. I feel like that's what it should be. It should be Serena as Patrick Halloran. Just something to keep in mind. Something for everyone to think about as they read this book. Picture it and read it as Serena.
Yeah.